Well, welcome. Appreciate you all taking time out of your busy day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
The event
us.
this morning was magical, as it usually is.
Yes.
So what were you hoping for out of the event?
Well, we had a pretty modest goal of getting somewhere between 200, 225 attendees. We filled up the room, both in person and online. We had a strong presence. And so we exceeded our expectations. And quite candidly, even though he's my favorite Kappa, you know, this is my first time hearing Lamont speak. The keynote speak was amazing.
I would agree. I took mental notes that I converted. I gave a keynote shortly after that one, and I stole some of your stuff. It was magical.
Is there any way I can get royalties?
Yeah, we're working on it. So Tori kept a agenda.
Yeah,
but
thank
you know,
you.
what really hit me was, if it takes me 1 year to get there, it's going to take you 3 years to get there. And that self-talk is a self-fulfilling prophecy and could be disabling to people. Share a little more on that before we go
kind
forward.
of what I was kind of discussing is year over year, instead of passing down words of wisdom, some of us, because of the experiences that we've passed down that anchor, if you will. You've got to work twice as hard to be noticed, 3 times as hard to be on an equal playing field. My goal, one of my goals, was to try to stop that statement with this generation, so we don't indict, convict, and sentence the generation behind us to deal with that baggage while they're trying to compete in a very competitive environment.
Yeah, and the other mic drop moment was, don't get in the way of your blessings.
Yeah.
Love that.
We have worked so hard over time. We've become so humble because we don't want to shine through doing that. Quite often we dilute or diminish the impact that we have. So don't get in the way of your blessings. That's one of the things that I kind of live by.
What looks different about MedTech Color today than when it started a few years ago? From a corporate side, from a member side, Kwame's still damn handsome, but beside that.
He hasn't aged much, right? So he's doing really well. I think it's the commitment, the partnership, the collaborations. People want in. Instead of us having to go out, people want to be a part of this and care about the mission and what we're doing. And we are seeing movement, and we are changing the needle. I mean, I think it's all about inclusivity, representation towards better health outcomes for patients. And I feel like there's a momentum, the tide is rising, and everyone wants to get on board. And it's just extremely exciting. And to Kwame's point, it was a jam-packed room. And as I keep telling him, next time it's going to be our own standalone event.
She claimed it.
Mike said it, Mike Musselman spoke afterwards, and Mike said, I'm speaking to the converted. And I will admit that until you really listen long enough to the DEI message at length, you really don't quite get it as a white man in the industry, because you get drips and drabs of it from HR, and I'm not holding HR responsible, but you really don't understand how you can contribute to that alliance to move forward. So how do we help that? How do we remedy that? Because everybody can't be listening to that amazing keynote and listening to your team. How do we get that message out more effectively?
So I have some thoughts, and I would love your thoughts. Quite candidly, I think leaders, whether they're white, black, or indifferent, can beef up budgets, focus on this issue, have KPIs. I think it's well known that Kevin Lobo and others really incentivize this effort with clear KPIs. And really, you said it, and I believe it, form meaningful partnerships with organizations who do this every day. So MedTech Women, MedTech Color, but those are my thoughts. What do you think?
No, I can't, I won't add much to that. I think everything you just said is kind of a billboard for me. Is let's not make it an event, let's make it a practice, and it's constant. Make DEI a part, or not just associated, but integral to everything that you do. And of course have these marquee events to make sure that it's kind of front and center. I also believe in rewarding the behavior that you want to see. And once you start rewarding that and people see it's differentiated for those who get it, others will come along.
And what I'd like to add is self-reflection. You know, you said as a white man, and I think, you know, Lamont was so transparent and so authentic, and he had a hard conversation. It's hard to listen to, and that takes bravery, right? Get out of your own way, or don't get in your own way. So I think, because you saw the data today, right? 1%, it's African American leaders. So as that white male who are typically taking up the C-suite, be developing the next generation, make sure they don't look like you. Who's going to take that CEO position? They should look different by race and by gender and sex. So I think it's being self-reflective, being self-aware, which you just stated, will take us a long way in terms of allyship.
So Kwame, talk to me about some of the programs that MedTech Color has going on, and especially the big ones that the corporate partners really enjoy.
So thank you for that. So ResMed, as an example, is excited about our pitch competition, so much so that they're a capital partner for the organization more broadly, but they have a special prize where they hand select one of our startups to be entered in their corporate accelerator. And we believe that out of the 30 companies that we will have invested in, one of them is going to be a unicorn. And one of them is going to be not a tuck-in, but a strategic acquisition for a large player. Johnson & Johnson, and I'm going to turn it over to Ned to talk about collaborative community, but Johnson & Johnson is really excited about diversity in clinical trials, and they have some specific ways that aligns with their strategy. And the last thing I'll talk about is talent access. Some of our corporate sponsors just want to be able to get a more diverse slate of candidates, a keynote speaker for a Martin Luther King event, diversify a panel that they're hosting. So those are the key ways that we add value to our corporate partners. But can you say a little bit more about
Yes,
CC?
so the collaborative community, we stood up in 2021. FDA approached MedTech Color and they said, can you be the convener of this? So it's diversity and inclusion in product development and clinical research. And we have everyone at the table, which is super exciting because through collaboration, we can really make change. AMA is a huge supporter of the collaborative community, and we have different work streams. The disease state awareness work stream is the one that's actually going into the community, boots on the ground, interacting in focus groups with Black and brown women who are dealing with heart disease, to understand what their situation is, to then bring that back and inform whether it be policies, whether it be big companies like J&J, Edwards, Abbott, what devices they're creating, how they're accessing and getting these women into clinical studies. So it's really exciting. It's a collaboration with FDA, CMS, and NIH. So it's not just within industry, it's the regulators as well, it's the funders, NIH. So I think there's a lot of momentum and energy, and I'm just excited about where we can go.
What I've just heard is getting insinuated into the process at the systemic level. Sort of, instead of skirting around the outside, which may have been all you had when you first started.
Yeah.
You were on the outside talking in, but what you just shared is the investment community, the clinical trial community. And then I'm going to ask you, Lamont, about, you mentioned a couple times, talking to the next generation, filling the pipeline. Like, who looks like me that I can talk to? Because already in the DEI initiatives, Google, Apple, Tesla are on campus. Yeah. Freshman, sophomore, junior. And as I mentioned this morning, nobody gets excited at the frat party talking about ostomy bags and Foley catheters, that I'm going to go make one of those.
That's true.
So how do we compete there so we can get the attention of the underrepresented when they're freshmen and sophomores?
One, to your point, you have to start early. And the competitive message, it's a great question, and it's an interesting one. What I always say is, there are no bad jobs in healthcare. Typically, healthcare speaks to something that is greater than. So I don't know if that's the way to compete, but it's a way to appeal to truly what's on purpose for most people. And even at that age, they've had an experience, they've had a family member that has had to lean on the healthcare system, and typically people who lean or kind of lean into healthcare, they want to do better. They want to see those outcomes be better, and they know their skill set can bring something of value to the table. So that's one of the ways that we compete for talent, if you will.
How do we get into the communities when the horse is already out of the barn? So they graduated, they're 3 years in, they have an event, their grandmother contracts some terrible disease, technology saved grandma, or during COVID, diagnostics saved somebody. And now they want to knock on the door. And we are so insular as an organization, as a category, like, no MedTech, sorry, you can't come in here. Now compound that with a smaller representation. How do we fix that?
I'll jump in. Oh,
Jump in.
no, Netta, you go.
Go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, you know, Joe, you spoke about it earlier, didn't you?
Yeah.
About how you changed the narrative on a job description. How you, again, you want them to want in, right? And to your point, that lived experience, it's invaluable. So Jeff Shuren, the center director of CDRH, when he opens up, he typically says, you know, you can go to a doctor or see your physician and never get prescribed a pharmaceutical or biologic. But you're always going to come in contact with a medical device. So we don't, you know, medical devices, products, technology, you know, with the digital era, they touch us in every way. So if we don't open up and allow the differences, the perspectives to really drive those innovations, we're going to fail and we'll lose out. And I think that's to the point earlier. This industry realizes it, right? We need to change how we interact, how we engage, how we draw people in, and appreciate that. Like you said, they don't have to be an engineer. They don't have to have quality management experience. You don't have to be a scientist. You can bring so much diversity and talent to really influence good outcomes in healthcare.
You said it. You know, literally you said it. What I was going to say is I think we have to do a better job at branding MedTech to understand not just the physician part of it, but all the collateral functions and skill sets that bring this to bear. If you look around you, all the booths, those are parts of that engine that drive MedTech.
Yeah. So Mass Life Sciences and Mass Medic, which I sit on the board of, there's a shortage of workers in MedTech and life sciences, especially here in Massachusetts. And filling up that pipeline is really challenging. And they've got a program that they're going out to the underrepresented communities and say, listen, you can start at $80,000 a year instead of maybe being a chef or loading a truck or, you know, being a seamstress, whatever it is. And we will train you in 3 months, we'll bring you up to speed, and we'll put you into an industry that is life sciences or MedTech. And here's what you'll be doing. Is that a good entry point for underrepresented in our community?
I think so, and you made me think of another program, the SMDP program, where there's a population of students that are being exposed to the medical device industry early. There's another opportunity to go to the North Carolina Centrals of the world, the Morehouses of the world, and have a booth, maybe in partnership with SMDP, maybe in partnership with the National Society of Black Engineers, exposing these students early on to these opportunities. And I must admit, I do agree that we have to be inviting and tell that story about why healthcare is so special, but it's an easy story to tell and you can immediately get it, but we just have to meet them where they are and further support the existing programs that are doing just what you said. Yeah.
What is corporate getting right and what does corporate need to be a work in progress on?
Corporate?
I love that, Kwame.
Here's your hot potato.
My response may be a little biased, but no, in all seriousness, what I love about where we are right now is that the intent is intensified. There's been effort in the past with the events of 2020 and the social justice amplification. We've doubled down on DE&I. We've truly realized that the constituency that we serve, they need to be constituency we serve inside and outside. So I love where we are right now, this moment and movement conversation. I really love the momentum that we have, not just from a verbal standpoint, but when you sit in the room, I feel it. From the C-suite down to folks who are just kind of moving boxes around, we know that we're delivering something that's bigger than just a task, a presentation, or a product. It's bigger than that. It's life-sustaining, it's life-saving, and people get that now. So the intent part, I think we're starting to get that right. I think we also realize that this is not going to be a silver bullet. It's not going to be a one answer. It's not going to be a 1 year. It's going to be a multifaceted, multi-phased approach. So I love the fact that this is about sustainable contributions. That's what I think we're getting right. Wrong, not so much wrong, but I'm excited about the fact that we're listening more to do better. So those are the things that I would say.
I want to, before I ask you to, we're listening more to learn better. I think that conversation has to even be more commonplace. I think that conversation needs to take place in context of people not saying, well, this is being forced on me, because that's the way the corporations get it incorrectly. I'm going to go there, you don't have to. It's change management, as I mentioned this morning. And you can't have a seminar on a Friday and Saturday, be an expert, and get it right on a Monday, and try and have all of that workplace understand it like that. Yeah. And so I would love to see more often clearer dialogue with conversations like went on this morning in the MedTech color. So that's my work in progress. Yeah. What are they getting wrong? What do they have a work in progress on?
I think Lamont hit it right. I think it's a journey, like you said. It's not a one-time. Yeah. It's ongoing, as you've also alluded to. And you have to say something 7 or 8 times before it takes hold and people actually start to, oh, is that really what you're saying? And you have to say it in different ways. And I think it's also about, similar to clinical studies where we want to meet patients where they are, even here in this DI, you want to meet people where they're at and give them the time to come along, right? You said not force down, because then they're not really going to be buying into it, not wanting to make it part of their DNA. So again, I think it's the momentum. We're like at an inflection point, and it's moving in a really positive direction.
I'll talk about 2 things: systemic, and here's an example. The FDA just released guidance that said breakthrough devices have to speak to health inequities. Similarly, Kevin Lobo made it a mission to diversify his board and his management team through the lens of gender. These are intentional, focused, explicit goals that I think the industry should adopt more broadly, and the magnitude, the dollars can be significantly increased. Let me give you a very specific example. Mindy Richter from J&J is on the former chair of California Life Sciences. She encouraged her peers to raise and donate $3 million for a focus on racial and social justice and equity. We need more Mindy Richters. We need more Johnson & Johnson's investing in this specific thing and encouraging their peers to do it. And the dollar amounts just need to get bigger for a real move the needle type of change. And that's what I think.
Can I just add, it is quite genius of FDA. You know, there's the carrot and the stick, right? And they're giving you a carrot. They're saying we're willing to have you develop devices that traditionally we might not have thought of developing because there's no ROI. But here, if it's a health equity aspect, oh, we'll grant you breakthrough. We'll work to expedite the development and your process through that regulatory pathway. We'll look at maybe the balance of pre-market v post-market data. It's awesome. They're putting their, money per se where their mouth is, and that's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
So you're all very positive on our journey. The inertia is high. I want you each to think about when you knew the tide turned and share your personal story of that moment when you said, okay, there's a real shot here of equaling the playing field of opportunity. We're not there, but take me back to that moment when you walked out of that room, closed that car door, or hung up that phone that you said, yes?
Wow.
That's why he does what he does.
I know.
Right? For me, it was shortly after George Floyd, and ResMed came back and said, we want to double down on our commitment. And that was the beginning of multiple conversations with large organizations who were accelerating their partnership with us. And quite frankly, it took what happened with George Floyd to have those conversations be quicker. The sales cycle got shorter, and the number of companies we were talking to increased. So that's what it was for me, George Floyd.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so was that a phone call, an in-person, or a memo?
It was an email. Just, we want to do more. But you know, the conversations are always really about what can we do in our 3 programs that meet your strategic priorities. So for ResMed, again, it was investing in early stage companies and access to talent. For other companies, they want to be associated with the breakfast. Every company is a little bit different in what aligns with their strategic priorities, but what I'm happy about is we have a program for you. You know, we have a way to support you on your journey, and you support us on ours.
Your moment.
I think there's a number of moments. I'm actually going to thank Lamont. Today, I think, was one of those where, like you said, it was an honest conversation and people listened. And after that conversation, I had folks like, we've never heard about this. I want in. The tide has shifted. How can I get involved? How can I support? That was a big aha today for me and how it moved me along. And then with the collaborative community, FDA's initial outreach, can you be the convener MedTech Color? This is right up your alley. And then everybody again wanted in, right? Because they saw the vision. And then AMA, historically a not very inclusive professional society, but they've called themselves out. They have the Info Health Equity Initiative, and we're part of that. And they are one of our biggest sponsors. So I just think you keep seeing there's a number of movements. Recently, Google had a Health Equity Summit that was also by invite only, but hey, MedTech Color was right there. Like, we're seeing these appropriate and meaningful connections and collaboration. So I think it's a number of ones, and today, I mean, I think it's been the highlight of my year, so.
Yeah.
Lamont, you shared a story this morning about Kevin Lobo, a very short one, but tell me yours.
You know, I'll tell you that moment, and I'll share a little bit about the story with Kevin. But to your point, there have been so many, but there was an outcome of our race to health equity within Johnson & Johnson of $100 million that we're just going to focus on this space. The outcome was important, but I think that moment, if you would, were the discussions that were had to lead to that. The all-in, everybody approach to try to figure out what does right look like. And then when we did the assessment, there's no real right. What are the best options and how do we just get at it? So I really love the commitment, not just about the dollars. I love the focus on increasing representation, and not just increasing representation, but what it's going to take to support that talent. So from a Johnson & Johnson standpoint, that's one of the things that really, there was a moment for me. And then from the story about Kevin I told, I was at Procter & Gamble, a great company, heading up the R&D organization for our GI portfolio, and I received a call from Kevin, and we had a new to the world, first of its kind device, a drug delivery device. And they asked if I had about an hour. What are we going to talk about for an hour? And he sat down and walked me through not just the company and the impact on patients, but the role that talent would play and the reason that he was making this call. So well before it was in vogue, you know, he was out there. I just celebrated my 15 years, even though Kevin's now at strike, but I just celebrated my 15 years at Johnson & Johnson. And he started and helped me get on this journey to support life-saving, life-sustaining products. So that was the story. I hate to have put him on the spot. He laughed because he remembered that conversation, but that was a moment for me that set me on this journey. And I'm biased, but so many others have benefited in my ecosystem because of leaders reaching out like that.
And that's a model that we all need to acknowledge and be obligated to fulfill. No doubt. Well, I appreciate the time as always. Congratulations on the continued success and making sure that all corporations, large and small, take part in MedTech Color. Critical for the entire ecosystem. Thank you all.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm Joe Mullings from the floor of AdvaMed 2022. Be well.